Hi, is anyone all here? Okay, I'll start this meeting. Hello, everyone. So thanks for joining us for today's meeting. My name is Fog, and I'll be your host today. So I don't see anyone. Is the native Alvaro? If
Hello.
you're new here, do you want to give us a little self-introduction?
Okay, it's not my first time. I stay here a lot of time, but I can give you a little introduction. I am Alvaro. I am the CEO of Native. The idea of Native is try to simplify the process to deploy applications. And currently we are integrating. Currently we have integrated the version 2 of Open Application Model. Currently we are migrating for the version to the version 3. Normally in these meetings participate Daniel, but today it's impossible from him participate in this meeting, and for the reason I am here.
Oh, thanks. Thank you for the introduction. I'm gonna share my screen now. So here's our meeting agenda, and today we're gonna have two parts here. So first, we're gonna have a demo of KubeVela Authentication and Authorization with multi-clusters presented by Da. And after that, since we have released our beta version of 1.4, so Jianbo will give an introduction to the key features in the KubeVela. So Dan, are you ready to show the demo?
Yeah, it's okay. I can share the screen and start the demo. Okay, I see another people comes in, and also I think the topic today is the topic for the authentication parts is one of the focus points for Native, because Daniel previously discussed a lot about this feature. So I would like to give a demo for how we build this mechanism and how to use it. Okay, so I will share my screen. Right, can everyone see it?
Yeah, yes, we can see it.
Yes.
Okay. So generally, we have a new brand new feature called the multi-cluster authentication and the authorization part in KubeVela version 1.4. So let's start with the installation part, because previously Daniel tells me that he has some problems with how to install it properly, since we have released the pre-release version of version 1.4 for KubeVela, and now we can have a very clear installation procedure for this feature. So it is pretty straightforward to use the helm install commands that we can install the helm. Sorry. Right. So generally, like usual, you need to use the helm install command to install KubeVela controller, and all you need is to set up two parameters for the helm chart. Also, it is possible to install it with the Vela CLI, the Vela install command as well. So I will. I think most people are familiar with the helm command, so I will introduce with this command. So the helm install part is only you only need to specify the latest version, which is version 1.4, beta 0.1, which is just released like 2 hours ago, and you can just install it. I use the flag for the wait flag and the debug flag, so that you can see the detailed installation process. But it is okay if you do not open them, since they are just optional flags, and we just need to wait some time to wait for the installation. Actually, I previously cleaned up all the KubeVela things in this example Kubernetes cluster. So if you have any problems during upgrading your KubeVela version, you can go to the Slack channel and all the any community issues, and you can raise the problems there. There are some known issues that's upgrading from 1.3 to 1.4. That since the cluster gateway part needs to upgrade the TLS secret, so you might need to delete the previous secret first and then reinstall the KubeVela. So this could be some extra action you need to do if you want to upgrade the KubeVela version. And we will see, like, I think more of the KubeVela components are ready. Yes, now we can see that. So you can see that in the Vela system, we have everything installed. And if you go to the KubeVela controller and see the bootstrap parameters, you'll find that we have authentication parameters set it in the KubeVela controller. So when you see these flags, then it means the controller has opened the authentication mechanism. So in this KubeVela system, you cannot deploy applications without granting privileges, and so that you can prevent some malicious requests to the API server for the Kubernetes. Right. So we have some Vela CLI commands to help you to manage the privileges of the users in KubeVela. So all the privileges are actually corresponding to the Kubernetes native privileges, such as the cluster roles, all the role bindings, and such kind of things. So you can use service account, and you can also use other user identity, like the user name or the group's info. So generally, we have a wrapper for the kubeconfig generation progress. So you can use Vela auth gen kubeconfig to generate a kubeconfig for the user you want to have. For example, if we would like to use the user of Alice. Sorry, I think I need to make this smaller. Right. So let's say we want to generate a kubeconfig for the Alice user, and then we would like to output the generated kubeconfig into a file named alice.kubeconfig. So now it will automatically generate the CSR in the Kubernetes cluster and approve it. And then the signed certificate will be stored in the kubeconfig so that you can use this alice.kubeconfig file to access the Kubernetes. And then the Kubernetes will recognize you as a user of Alice instead of the default admin user. So let's see in the alice.kubeconfig file, there are already set up everything you need to access the cluster. So if you use you use this kubeconfig to access the, for example, the default namespace. You will find that the user Alice now cannot do anything since there is no privilege granted to her. So you need to, as the admin, you need to grant some privilege to her so that she can have some rights to create applications or other resources, no matter in the hub control plane or the managed clusters. So let's see how it works with the multi-cluster part. We have already the C1 cluster, the C1 kubeconfig refers to the control planes kubeconfig, and the C2 and C3 are two managed clusters. So let's start with the Vela cluster join with these clusters. And the first cluster is C2, and we also have C3 here. So, and we can check it with the Vela cluster list command. And we will see that the cluster has already been properly joined to the hub control plane. So now you can deploy resources into the managed clusters as well. So let's say since Alice do not have any privileges any privileges now. So if she delivers any applications in the hub control plane and want to dispatch any resources into the managed clusters, she will be forbidden to do that things. So we need to grant some privilege. So the first thing we need to do is to run the Vela auth grant privilege command. And we will refer to the user Alice. And then let's say we want to give her the privilege in the dev namespace. And this will work for the cluster of local control plane and the C2 cluster. Okay, now we see that since there is no dev namespace in cluster local, so it will raise an error. So normally you have two ways to do it. You can either create a namespace manually with the kubectl command, or you can use the create namespace flag in the authentication command. Now you can see that the dev namespace is created in the local cluster and the C2 cluster. And the roles and role bindings are automatically created so that the privileges are properly granted to user Alice. So you, as the admin, you can also check the results with the list privilege commands. And we will see the privileges for user Alice in all clusters. And now we can see that it lists all the resources related to the privilege that Alice has. So you can see that now Alice has all the resource read and write privileges in the dev namespace of local cluster and C2 cluster, but there is no privilege found in the C3 cluster since we do not do it. So that means that Alice can only can do everything she wants to do, like create an application or update resources in the dev namespace of cluster local and the C2 cluster, but she cannot do anything in the C3 cluster. So let's say we want to deploy a resource. Let's say we would like to deploy a pod info application. So the pod info application here has some topology policies which refers to that it will be dispatched to the local cluster and the C2 cluster. And let's deploy it. And it will use the Alice kubeconfig. So let's create this application. Now the application is created and we can check it with Alice. We can see that the application is deployed and it is running healthily. So if we would like to see the details of this application, you would find that this application will carry some identity information in its annotation. now we can see that the annotation part, we have the username as Alice bounded to this application, and it will mean that all the resource manage operations from this application will use the identity of Alice, so that all the if the application tries to deploy any resources outside the Alice outside the namespace that Alice can operate, it will be forbidden by the Kubernetes API server. And we previously said that the Alice only have the privilege in the local cluster and the C2 cluster. So what will happen if she tries to deploy an application that wants to dispatch resources in the C3 cluster? So we can try to do it now we will change the application to deploy the pod info deployment in the C3 cluster in the dev namespace. So before we start, let's think that we previously only create the dev namespace in the local cluster and the C2 cluster, so that there is no namespace named dev in C3 cluster. So let's create the namespace first, and then we will check how things will happen for Alice. Okay, so now let's use the identity of Alice to create an application to dispatch the pod info in C3 cluster. And now we see that the application of this pod info bed is stuck in the running workflow phase, and we can see that this application has some failure during the deploy process, and it said that this deployment is forbidden since user Alice do not have the privilege to create or read any resource like deployments in the C3 cluster. So it means that without properly granted privileges, Alice cannot do things in the C3 cluster. And now let's say if we want to create another user which only has the privilege to read the application, but cannot to create or update any applications. So it is also possible with the KubeVela auth command. So let's say we create a user named Bob. Okay, so as usual, the user Bob do not have any privilege to operate anything. And we can also have the grant privilege for the user Bob. Also, we grant the privilege in the local namespace and the local cluster and the C2 cluster, and in the namespace of dev. The only difference is that we add the read-only flag, which means that user Bob can only read the resources in those clusters, but cannot do any modification to the resources. So let's say we use the kubeconfig of Bob to show the pod info bad application in the dev namespace. And you can see that he can read the information properly, but if it wants to use the KubeVela delete command, so now we can see that the operation will have some problems since Bob only have the privilege to read resources, but it cannot do the deletion operation in the dev namespace. But if we change the identity to Alice, we can see that the application can be properly deleted since Alice Alice has the privilege to delete applications or update anything inside the dev namespace. So that we can see from this example, we have two different users. One user can only read and write resources in the dev namespace, and the other user, Bob, can only read resources. With this function, you can deploy KubeVela in your like production or test environment and divide your privileges into different groups or users so that your users can only do anything inside its privileges. And the user cannot do other things, to do things in other namespace or the other clusters. And this is generally a simple guide for the latest feature of KubeVela's multi-cluster authentication and authorization. So generally, you can do many things based on that. For example, the grant privilege can based on groups instead and service account instead of the user. So there are many things you can try with this developed mechanism. And also, if you do not want to grant privileges for all the namespace, but you want to have some dedicated resource types, you can also use the native Kubernetes commands like kubectl, create role bindings to do anything like the native ways. And then the KubeVela's controller can also recognize those configurations properly and do the authentication as well. Okay, so there is another small things I would like to introduce, which is an extension for the KubeVela controller, is that when you see that if we have this authentication mechanism, we usually have some strong requirements for users that they should not have the access to very confidential information, such as the cluster secret. So if we can see that in the Vela system namespace, we have those clusters with their secret, their credential information stored in this secret. So it means that if users have access to the cluster secret inside the Vela system namespace, it means that they can store the credential information of the managed clusters and use them in their own spaces, so that they can like to destroy something inside the managed cluster, which can be very dangerous. So usually we will not allow user to access the secret inside the Vela system namespace. But there comes another problem, that if we do not allow user to see that there are secrets inside the Vela system namespace, how can they know that which clusters they can use? So we do not have any CRDs or any mechanisms to represent this virtual cluster. But we have another API extension server named Vela Prism, which can help you to do that. So the installation part is also very simple. You can go to the GitHub repo and see the installation guide. That first you need to add the Helm chart repo and make some updates. Actually, I previously already added this chart repo. And then after that, you can use the Helm install command to install the latest Prism inside your cluster. And it is a kind of add-on for the KubeVela system, and you do not need it if you do not want this feature. But if you want to make some extensions to your KubeVela system, it is also pretty straightforward to install the KubeVela's Vela Prism API extension server to your Kubernetes cluster or the control plane. It is a bit slow for the Helm repo update, And since we already have got the updates for the Prism chart repository, let's directly install it. I think it might need to make the repo update. Helm install. Okay, I think the problem is that we do not have officially released version. So we need to say it's Vela 1.4.0 beta 0.1. So actually it's now installing the Vela Prism, and it is okay to, yeah, it's installed very fast. And you can check the pod in the Vela system. And you will see that there is a new deployment and the pod named Vela Prism inside, and it is running properly. It works as the aggregated server to the Kubernetes system, which is pretty similar to the cluster gateway. And you can also check the API service to see if it is work properly. Yeah, it is running now. So now we have the Vela Prism extension, and now we can do some things like you can use the kubeconfig of Alice to get Vela clusters. Let's say cluster. They are similar. So now we can see that with the cluster, and you can see that there are C2 and C3 clusters and the local clusters, which we just added in our control plane. And if you try to get the details of these clusters, you can see that the confidential information for the cluster secret are hidden, so that the user Alice can know that there are clusters C2 and C3, but she cannot get the credential information of those clusters, so that all the access to those clusters must be operated through the KubeVela system, so that you can restrict the user Alice with the privileged system we just introduced. So this is one of the benefits you can get from the Vela Prism API extension server. Also, with this extension server, you can also have many functional and powerful capabilities, such as you can use the Vela status to check the status of the application with details. And let's format them in a tree part. Yeah, so it's a bit large. And actually, we can see that the deployment pod info is deployed in the cluster C2 and the local cluster. And with this command, you can see the details for the object as well. Actually, my screen is a bit small today, so so now you can see that without directly accessing the managed cluster, you can also use this command to check all the resource managed by this application as well. So this is also another capability brought by the Vela Prism. So you can feel free to use the Helm install to try it. And we will also make KubeVela's add-on in the catalog part in KubeVela, and make the Prism to be an official add-on in KubeVela as well. Okay, so today's demo is here. All about today's demo are demonstrated. So if there is any problems, you can just ask me or Jianbo or Fog. We are free to answer your questions. And also the detailed documentation will be uploaded to the official documentation site like 1 week later. Yeah.
Thank you, Da. This is great demo. And can you show in Alice with Alice privilege that you can't get secret from the Vela system?
Yeah, right. So we can see that with the Alice with Alice, we can actually, you cannot get anything from the Vela system because you do not have any privilege in Vela system. So if you want to get C2 with the details, you cannot get anything that's useful.
Yes, that's the power of Vela Prism. The mechanism are the same by Vela status command. The Vela status command needs some global resources that is cluster scoped.
Yeah.
And could you provide some usage about Vela kubeapply? And that is also a powerful command added in this release.
Actually, sorry, I do not have any existing Kubernetes YAML file to demonstrate the kubeapply, but there are things we can demonstrate which is very similar. That is the Vela kubedelete. Actually, we have Vela kubeapply and kubedelete to manage resource directly in Kubernetes, but with the multi-cluster style. For example, we previously created the dev namespace in different clusters, and now that let's say we do not need any applications in in the dev namespace anymore. So we want to delete the dev namespace. So previously, if you want to delete the dev namespace in all 3 clusters, including the local cluster, the C2 cluster, and the C3 cluster, you need to go inside each cluster and delete the namespace one by one. But now with the Vela kubedelete command, you can delete the namespace with the cluster flag, and it will means that this operation will be done in all the clusters. And you can see that all namespaces in 3 different clusters are deleted. So it is similar to use the kubeapply command to apply resources, like you can dispatch like your YAML file in clusters with this command. It is pretty convenient for you if you want to manage your manage clusters resources from the control plane. Yeah.
Yes, they are pretty convenient commands that can help you manage clusters in the control plane.
Hey, Da and Jinbo, this is great. Thank you for this demo. I have a quick question with regard to the cluster tag or the, if I'll give you the use case, we have like 40 plus clusters. And if we have to list down every cluster name as comma separated, it could be cumbersome. Is there a way to use regex, or is that something that you think is possible? Let's say.
Yeah, I think it's a good idea. Currently, we do not have a cluster selector in the CLI part. So unfortunately, currently we can only do it with the comma splitted list. But I think it's a good point to help user to use it to manage clusters. And I think we can have some like Vela kubeapply dash cluster cluster label selector.
Yeah, that would work.
To have key equals value, and so that it will automatically select all the clusters with this label and to execute this command. I think it's okay. We can have this feature in the future.
Yeah, that would help also for while creating the privileges, right? If we can do the same thing.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
But beside, in addition to that, if you want to dispatch dispatch applications, actually currently we already have the you can write cluster selectors, cluster label selector here. So in the controller part, we already support it. So if you want to deliver resources through the application in multiple clusters, you can use the cluster label selector here. Yeah, it is already supported.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks for the amazing demo show. And Jimbo, can you share the latest version of KubeVela for us?
Sure. Then the next part, I will describe the release note for you. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yep.
Which one?
The VS Code.
Okay. We have just released the 1.4 bet 1 release, and I think if there's no big issues, we will release the formal 1.4 release at the end of this month. We have already released 3 alpha releases, and this release note won't cover features released in those 3 ones. In this release, we have one big feature that is just demoed by Da. I think that's a really great demo, and you have all learned that features. That's around multi-cluster authorization and multi-cluster convenient tools about Vela kube apply and Vela kube delete. And there is also lots of other features, such as we have enhanced the KubeVela workflow. We have support sub-steps. This means you can specify child steps in one step group, and our workflow is running in a step-by-step mode. So when you want to run parallel steps, you can use the sub-step. You can group several steps in one step as a sub-step groups, and then the sub-steps will run in parallel. We will also support such as if condition in the step. And the next changes is we have some enhancement around components and traits. We have support force delete Terraform typed application. I think that's what you needed, Noob.
Yes, and you did.
Also,
thank you.
Yeah, you can try this release and give us some feedbacks if there is still any issues. And we also enhance the component definition about web service. We support health probe with HTTPS, and we support HTTPS protocol in gateway trait. And we also make the host field of gateway trait as an optional field. And we also add some features in the command line. We added an offline flag that we can dry run without any Kubernetes clusters. So I think it's very convenient for scenarios that they just want to use Vela as an abstraction layer. So users can input their application YAML and get the Kubernetes YAML without any Kubernetes server or KubeVela server. They just need the Vela command line. And another feature is we have added some helpful information in the Vela add-on status. I think it's really helpful when you want to check your add-on. We have added such as which version you have installed, which version you can choose to install, and the dependencies, parameters. And we also had some add-ons that you didn't install and the registry information. So I think it's more convenient for you to check add-on information with the Vela add-on status command. And we also support some, and before we don't support Vela show policies, especially for building policies. And in this release, we have added some definitions for building policies. So we can use Vela show or use Vela UX to see them in the UI console. And also we have support the map type in the Q definition. So we can use Vela show to see map type. And we also enhanced the Vela QL and some policies. For example, we have extended the apply once policy to allow we just apply once for some specified paths. This is very useful when we want to use Horizon autoscaler. For example, we have used the manual scaler and specify the replica of an application. And if we don't use apply once for the whole application, the reconcile loop will force the replicas to be a specified one. Then the Horizon autoscaler won't work. With this apply once policy help, we can specify the replica field to not be enforced to the specified replicas. So the Horizon pod autoscaler can work, and the other fields can still be driven in the reconcile loop. And another Vela QL is we have the capability to get the application resource tree. I think in the following days, we will add a graph to in the Vela UX, which is a UI console, and you will able to see all the resources that an application deployed, and we will drive them in the UI console as a DAG. And this feature means we have implemented the underlying code, but we haven't finished the UI console part, and we will finish in the following week, in the following 1 week, I think. And the next is we have some capability to fill resource kind and API version. This is also used by Vela UX, and we have several updates in the Vela UX part. But this release we don't include Vela UX, so you can ignore this part. And we also did some deprecates. For example, we have deprecated the automatically conversion from V1 Alpha 2 to V1 Beta 1. And since we have upgraded the CRD of application to V1 Beta 1 for more than half, and 1.5 years. So I think we can deprecate the auto conversion for V1 alpha 1 alpha 2. This means users install the Helm chart of KubeVela will not convert from V1 alpha 2 to V1 beta 1 automatically, because they will just use V1 beta 1. And if still has some migration needs, then they can enable this conversion. This is also support if you specify some valid Helm chart values. And the next deprecated thing is we have deprecated the OAM runtime in the KubeVela chart. OAM runtime is also a latency support. We haven't used it in almost 2 years. This is first the controller before KubeVela. We used it in OAM Kubernetes runtime and in for latency support, and all users who are using KubeVela application won't use this Helm chart, so we have deprecated it. And there are some bug fixes for 1.4 version. The first is we fix a query bug that if we have an empty environment, then we still can have a normal query. And we also fix the Vela add-on command line bug that we can compare the Vela Vela version normally. These two are small bug fixes, and it only affects users who are using 1.4 alpha versions. I think that's all of the 1.4 beta 1 release, and we have already in the code freeze section. So in the following weeks, in the next 1 or 2 weeks, we won't add any big features, and just bug fixes will be backport in the release 1.4, and if there are no big issues, we will release 1.4 at the end of this month. Yes. So is there any questions?
Any questions? Okay. I'm gonna share my screen again. So. Okay, finally, we're gonna take a look at the issue in GitHub. I don't see any new comments here, so let's skip this part. So, before we wrap up, anyone have questions or something to discuss? Okay, so thanks for joining us today, and the record of this meeting will be uploaded to the OAM channel in YouTube soon. So I guess this meeting is over, and I hope you all have a good day. So bye, see you next time.
Bye, thank you, folks. Thank you, Da.
Thank you. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Bye.